Hi, welcome to this session on emotion coaching. The session was designed by the educational psychologist and advisory teacher working in our Thoughtful team. I'm Jo, their assistant, and I'm sharing this session with you today. So these are the aims of the session. To understand what emotion coaching is, to learn about the background of emotion coaching and why it's important, to understand what meta-emotion is, to discuss the role of empathy in our responses, and to learn about the different stages of emotion coaching in order to follow an emotion coaching approach. Let's start with an iceberg analogy, where we see the tip, but beneath the surface there is so much more. This is very true of our emotions. The emotion we experience or express is just the tip of the iceberg. So have a think about the last time you felt really angry. What happened? Who were you angry with? And what were all the possible feelings that were behind the anger? Often when we are angry, there are other emotions below the surface that we are just less skilled in being able to identify or express. It's really easy to show anger, as it gives us an outlet for our emotions. It's much more difficult to reflect on the other more vulnerable emotions below the surface. For example, I might show anger, but underneath, it might be that what you've said is really hurtful, and this makes me feel insecure. It's harder to express that. If you need more time, or if you've thought about a time when your child has recently been angry, why not pause the video for a moment? Our behaviour is often driven by our emotions, and even as adults, we're not as skilled in managing these. This is even more so with children and young people. If we can understand the emotion that's underneath the behaviour we see in them, we're a step closer to supporting a change in their behaviour. Emotional intelligence is valued highly nowadays. The ability to notice, use, understand and manage emotions in our own self and in others. But see just how many different emotions there are. How do we learn these distinctions? What age do we learn the distinction between discouraged and frustrated? And how do we learn how to express these emotions and recognise them in others? It is really helpful if children can learn the words to describe their emotion beyond just happy, sad and angry. As we'll cover later, if you can name it, you can tame it. A bit more about this emotion coaching approach. A personal example. I was really surprised to hear a few months ago that my 9-year-old daughter had slapped her friend at school, which is really out of character. To her credit, the child she slapped explained to the teacher what had really happened. It turns out there'd been a wasp, and although my daughter had given a little scream, her friend had thought she wasn't serious, and it was only and then when the wasp was long gone, the friend had teased my daughter saying, "The wasp's back and it's on your arm." And when my daughter started crying and slapped her, the friend realised that my daughter had actually been really scared, but hadn't expressed this. I was impressed that the school talked this through rather than going straight to discipline. This gave an opportunity for reflecting on the emotions and better ways to express them first, before bringing in the consequences of the action. If this had happened in my own home, with a different friend who had been less understanding, I think it could have played out quite differently. My own emotions, my shock and embarrassment would have affected how much I could have talked through. But I'm learning. Now we'll look at the coaching in more detail later, but the key is teaching children to understand the emotions they are experiencing, why these emotions occur, and how to self-regulate in the future. It's built on the premise that all behaviour is communication. The emotion coaching approach comes from work by John Gottman. He said, negative feelings dissipate when children can talk about their emotions, label them and feel understood. Also, that much of today's popular advice ignores the world of emotions. Instead, it relies on child-rearing theories that address the child's behaviour but disregard the feelings that underlie the behaviour. So, you may or may not have had success with some of the theories and ideas that have been around for a while, such as letting your child cry it out, or the naughty step. Sometimes these can be described in ways that ignore a child's emotions, not always. But that's the type of popular advice John Gottman was referring to. He found it wasn't enough in itself to be a warm and loving parent and just listen to how your child is feeling. Very warm and concerned parents, he found, often had attitudes to their own and others' emotions that got in the way. He also looked at parents who were trying to fix their child's problems, but sort of brushing the emotions aside, and found that it wasn't ideal either. So, emotion coaching is where parents do both listen to and empathise with their child's emotions in the moment when emotions are running high, but also later setting limits once the child's calmed down, looking at problem solving. So the first part, listening to the child's emotions in the moment, might be saying, for example, you look so frustrated right now. It is frustrating when that happens. Maybe you dropped your ice cream. And then later on saying, it's important not to slam the door. It could break, it could hurt you, it frightens the dog. What could you do differently next time? What would help you with those big feelings? So, emotion coaching is teaching children about the world of emotions in that moment, giving children strategies to deal with the ups and downs. Children needing to understand that their feelings are not the problem, their behaviour might be. Seeing that emotional times are opportunities for intimacy and teaching. Accepting negative emotions as normal, and as a team we recommend this approach for teachers and for parents and carers. So, the emotions we have are dependent on the values and norms of a child's environment and relationships. Fear, surprise, joy, disgust and anger are present at birth, but the rest of the emotions we learn. For example, you might spot when your child first seems to show envy, guilt, pride or shame. Often, how we've experienced emotions as a child still influences how we deal with emotions as we get older. Being aware of our own responses gives us opportunities to change them. If you think about anger, our anger processing system is linked to a sense of justice and fairness. We don't just get angry when we've been untreated fairly, we also get angry if we feel others are being treated unfairly. And this is natural and normal. as the emotion processing region of our brain is being activated in response to this sense of unfairness. This triggers the anger. The two are very linked. And looking at this list, it's worth thinking about how joy is outnumbered. We are primed to look for the negatives in life to keep us safe and alive. Emotion coaching is underpinned by our understanding of how the brain develops. It can be helpful to view the brain as 3 sections and liken each area to an animal. This idea was developed by Jane Evans. So, first part of our brain to develop before birth is the brainstem. This is responsible for survival, reflexes, breathing, things which keep us from danger. And so we can like it to a meerkat, so always alert to danger. The next section is the limbic section, an emotion processing region. It's responsible for emotional memory. So we can like it to an elephant. As we know, elephants never forget. And there's a third section here, the cortex, or neocortex, is not fully developed until we reach our mid-20s. It's responsible for rational thinking, language, problem solving. We can liken that to the monkey or chimp due to the similarities with humans in the way they can use tools and communicate. So throughout childhood, children are developing pathways between these parts of the brain to allow them to learn to regulate their emotions better. Now, if you take a 2-year-old being given the wrong colour cup and an adult being given the wrong colour cup, hopefully we'll see a difference, as the cortex is better developed in adults, so they can apply reasoning and logic and language to this distressing situation. But a child of 2 may have a fully blown emotional reaction over something like this. Their cortex is not as well developed. All of us, though, when we are really emotional, we do have less involvement of our cortex. And in that state, we cannot easily be reasoned with until we've calmed down. We can help children to calm down the lower regions of their brain with sensory activities like jumping, stretching, listening to music, and breathing. Firm hugs if they can tolerate it. And then the next step is engaging with the limbic part of the brain, labelling emotions and empathising, and that's where emotion coaching comes in. This is Dan Siegel's hand model of the brain. It's a really helpful way of explaining the brain to children of all ages. It's a massive simplification, but it is a good way to explain. If you hold your hand like the hand on the right, the brainstem would be the base of the hand, the limbic brain, the upper bit of your hand, the palm and thumb, and the cortex is the fingers folded over. We can say that when emotions run high, we can flip our lids. That's that the top part of the brain, the cortex, flips up like the hand on the left and becomes disconnected from the lower parts of the brain because the pathways are not running clearly between them. We can't reason or problem solve when this happens. We go back to the fight, flight, freeze, and it's only once we calm down that the cortex and the lower parts of the brain, the brainstem and limbic regions, can reconnect, allowing us to problem solve and reason and make sense of our emotions and what happened. There are some really good video clips by Dan Siegel online, which I'd really recommend viewing. From his research, John Gottman identified these 4 different styles in dealing with emotions. Of course, we can all be in all of them at different points, but on a good day, we aim to be in the emotion coaching style. So to run through them. The disapproving style is when an adult with this style disapproves of negative emotions, viewing them as a sign of weakness, lack of control, unconstructive. So the adult can then lack empathy with those emotions, and may be critical and intolerant of them, tries to get rid of the negative emotion being displayed by discipline, reprimanding. The adult focuses on the behaviour rather than the emotion that has generated the behaviour. So the adult is more likely to view the child's emotion or emotional display as a form of manipulation, lack of obedience, or bad character. They often feel the need to control and toughen up the child, and may see their approach as a no-nonsense approach. The consequence can be that the child then learns that negative emotions are bad emotions. Moving on to the dismissive style. This style also wants to avoid negative emotions, but may do it through more minimising or making light of them. They may be motivated by a need to rescue, to fix the problem, to make things better, rather than to try and understand what feelings are behind the problem. The adult may be uncomfortable themselves, fearful, anxious, hurt, annoyed, or overwhelmed by negative emotions. Wants them to go away, and that's the message that the children receive. So, different from the disapproving style in that, as it says, low guidance. They are not trying to give guidance on how to fix the situation that's led to the display of behaviour. Just want it to stop and then move on to whatever's next. So the laissez-faire approach, an adult with this style freely accepts all emotional expression and offers comfort. That doesn't offer the guidance to teach the child about emotions or set limits on their behaviour when the child's expressing themselves, and doesn't help the child to problem solve. This can lead to a reliance on distraction and comfort to get rid of their emotions. And perhaps the child can have difficulty getting along with others, as their behaviour may upset others. They haven't learnt to regulate their emotions in a healthy way. So, as we've touched on briefly, the emotion coaching approach then takes kind of two parts: the helping the child understand their emotion in the moment, giving words to what that emotion is, and then later giving guidance on how to deal with that emotion in a more constructive way in the future and problem solve that approach. So just now, pause the video and reflect what emotional styles you may feel, you may have. Do you tend to gravitate towards one style? What about other adults who are close to your child? Don't worry that many of us find we are outside of the emotion coaching style. That is why we're here. And we can develop a more emotion coaching style with practice. Now, meta-emotion means how we feel about emotions. So take some time to reflect on these two questions. First is, how were emotions dealt with when you were a child? You may want to reflect back on those 4 different styles. And the second is, how does that impact on you now? For some, this could stir up some difficult emotions, so be kind to yourselves. You might want to pause the video and check you've got enough time, or if you think this could stir up emotions, have something sort of as a backup to help you with that. So that second question, how do our childhood experiences impact on us now? as we need to regulate our own emotions before responding to a situation with our child. If we're emotionally heightened, there is a danger that we also revert to our fight, flight or freeze response, and we can't think clearly or rationally. Of course, there are times for all of us when dealing with things seems harder than normal. For example, when we're tired or stressed, or behaviour has really pushed a button with us. So in that moment, it's about us trying to pause and be aware of our own emotions before we respond. It's a cliche, but it's the idea on the screen here of putting on your own oxygen mask before putting one on somebody else. And some behaviours can be difficult to deal with. In this case, it's worth talking to someone else to debrief, reflect on what's happened. You need to be able to keep your own cup full to be able to fill others. I'm just going to talk through the emotion coaching key steps. So, as we've said, emotion coaching supports a child to manage the emotions they're experiencing in that moment, and to recognise that all emotions are acceptable, but not all behaviours are. So step 1 is about recognising the emotions the child is feeling and being able to empathise and show them that you understand. That you see how they feel, you don't just see what they're doing, what their behaviour is. Step 2 is showing them that you know how they're feeling. This might be done verbally or non-verbally. If we can label the emotions, they can learn how to express them verbally themselves. Step 3 is about problem solving. Oh, no, it's not. That's step 4. Step 3 is about setting limits. What is and what is not acceptable behaviour. Of course, there'll be times when you have to do that right in the moment. Can't always wait until they've calmed down. Step 4 is about problem solving and helping them to build their toolkits, helping them understand what they're feeling and why, and how they might be able to respond in the future. So, emotion coaching provides the framework where we can use moments of heightened emotions to teach and guide children about more effective responses. As you can see from the steps, emotion coaching enables us to verbally acknowledge and show that we understand the child's emotional state. And that can help promote a sense of security, feeling understood. This can then activate changes in the child's neurological system, allowing the child to calm down, physiologically and psychologically. Emotion coaching allows us to address children's behaviours without condoning them, so that we can discuss incidents in a rational and productive way once the child has calmed. Once this happens, we can engage in problem solving and solution-focused strategies. So a bit more detail about the steps. So step 1 takes place before you say anything to the child or young person. Step 1 is recognising that all emotions are natural and normal, and it's not that the child is choosing to feel this way. It's trying to keep in mind that their behaviour is a form of communication. So you're considering what the child is trying to communicate. We need to look for signs of what emotion the child is experiencing. Observe, listen and watch their facial expression, body language, posture and tone of voice. Some emotions might seem more obvious, like crying if you're feeling sad, but others can be more subtle or difficult to identify. And it might be that your child is saying one thing, but the actual emotion is something else. As we've said, they might be saying, "I'm so angry." But if you can help them identify that it's embarrassment or a feeling of failure or sadness behind that anger, then this will be able to help them to show that emotion differently in the future. Also, then we're hoping in this stage they're going to calm down. We may think they're emotional about something which is no big deal, which can really test our patience, especially if we're in public. But keep the end goal in mind. As your child understands their emotions more and feels your understanding of them, they will be learning to express them in words rather than actions. So you're trying to take their perspective on the situation. So in step 2, we name the emotion. And this, as we've said, name it to tame it, can actually help them to take ownership over how they're feeling. You're hoping to get in with this level sooner rather than later, before levels have escalated to a crisis. Watch your own emotions. Take a moment if you can. So we can use words to reflect back how we think a child's feeling and help them label their emotions. And it can be helpful to have set phrases. I can see you're feeling angry. It's okay to feel, in this case, angry about that. I would feel the same, you could say. Or I noticed that you have gone all quiet. I wonder whether you're worried about something. So that I can see, and I've noticed, and I wonder whether. Those would be good phrases. As Dan Siegel would say, the name it to tame it approach. So naming how we are feeling can help us tame those emotions. When children don't have appropriate words, they can't label their own feelings, can't describe what they're feeling, understand why they're feeling something, or get over a feeling. And it's not simply that that they don't know the words. You can be dealing with a child who's got a huge vocabulary. As we've said, it's being able to recognise what that emotion is in them and linking that to a word. They might know all the words like frustrated and humiliated, but can they realise that that's what they're experiencing at that time? So here are the phrases we've mentioned. I see, or I've noticed. I wonder if you're feeling, because I can see you doing blah blah blah. Are you feeling an emotion? Can you tell me about that? I imagine that feels. I can see that you get angry when that happens. I would feel angry if that happened to me too. It's normal to feel like that. So I hope you'll be able to see these cartoons okay. I'll read through them. So in this first cartoon, the parent is denying the feeling that the child has. So this is not emotion coaching. So there's the girl saying, my turtle was dead. He was alive this morning. Now don't get so upset, honey. But she's still upset. Don't cry, it's only a turtle. Crying more. Stop that. I'll buy you another turtle. I don't want another one, says the child. Now you're being unreasonable. So, a different way of doing it. Here's the girl again. My turtle was dead. He was alive this morning. And they're recognizing that in this child, it was only this morning it was alive. Now the turtle's dead. So, putting the word to it of shock. Oh no, what shock? Then the girl says, he was my friend. An adult, to lose a friend can hurt. And the girl says, I taught him to do tricks. So what's the child expressing behind that? You two had fun together. and the child's still saying, I fed him every day. And adult helping the child to understand that was caring. You really cared about that turtle. So they're empathizing with them. If you reflect for a moment when you've had a really difficult day, what did you find helpful when you told someone about it? People often, with the best intentions, jump into trying to fix the problem or reassure. That can make us feel not listened to, not understood, perhaps a bit frustrated. Feeling understood is really powerful. And if your child feels understood, it builds up your relationship with your child. As John Gottman has said here, proposing solutions before empathizing is like trying to build the foundations of a house before the firm foundation. Like trying to build a house before a firm foundation. Now, if you can try and search up this YouTube clip from the Inside Out film of when sadness comforts Bing, it's a really nice way to see, a bit like with the turtle and the parent or the adult there, the girl and her turtle, but this is a really very, very good clip. So pause, please go away and find this clip. So step 3, setting limits. This is if their behaviour has been something that is not appropriate. And obviously it's a really important step, because without it, you're just listening to their emotions and validating, but they may well repeat the behaviour next time and next time. Now, as it says, safety first. So if your child is standing close to the edge of the road, as in this picture, you're not going to be spending your time trying to talk to them about how you understand their need to run into traffic, and how probably the emotion behind that could be fight and flight and some anxiety. No, you're just going to stop them going into the traffic, of course. And then, once they're calmed down, you can talk about that limit, the limit that you do not deal with your fear by getting close to the edge of the road. So this is a part of dealing with children's behaviour that is never pleasant. So we have got some phrases on the next slide to give an idea of how this might pan out. So here's some phrases. These are the rules we all have to follow, and doing that is not okay. Or you could say, it's okay to feel angry, but it's never okay to kick someone. Another one, you're angry that I took away your phone, but these are the rules we all have to follow. I will keep it safe and give it back at the end of the day. And here we've also got, as an example, you didn't do the task we agreed. You're probably angry that you can't join in a session with the others because you have to do that task first. So I think the key part of all of this is that it's quite short and simple. We don't want to be getting into debates with our children and young people. It won't do our emotions any good. We'll only get very much more frustrated. So it's trying to be really quite clear about this emotion. Yes, that's okay. Emotions are okay. But this action, not okay. And this is the consequence. But when your child's in a calm and relaxed state, that could be sometime later, this step is really key. And that is trying to explore the feelings that led to that behaviour or the incident, and help your child with alternative ideas and actions so that next time it can go better for them. Help your child to believe that they can overcome difficulties and manage their feelings and behaviour. I say, you can't go into this stage if the child's in a heightened sense of emotion. Remembering, if they flip their lid, if the cortex is not speaking to the lower parts of the brain, the emotional side, the part of the brain that's on the alert for danger, if that disconnect has happened, they're not going to be able to rationalise and reason to think of problems and solve problems. So I'll leave you with a practice scenario in a second. Here are some problem-solving scripts. So you might say to your child or young person, tell me what happened to make you feel this way. What were you thinking, feeling then, and how do you feel about it now? What can you do to solve this problem? Or if that's a bit too vague, what could you do differently next time when you feel just like that? And is there anyone who can help you with this? And if they really can't come up with solutions themselves, of course, you can try and give them what you feel could work better. Let's look at some different choices. Ideally, if there's a few different things they could do so that they can have ownership and pick one, that can work well. Here's the practice scenario. So have a go at what you might say. I'll just read through it. Katie has had a difficult afternoon since getting home from school. She has been shouting at her parent and her siblings, as well as deliberately taking things belonging to her brother. It's now tea time and her parent has made something that Katie is usually happy to eat. Katie says she's not eating this yucky dinner and goes to get herself a packet of crisps from the cupboard. Her parent says that she can't have crisps instead of her tea and tells Katie she can go and get ready for her bath if she doesn't want to eat. So first we can think about how we would respond to this if we were looking purely at the behaviour, so a behaviour management approach. What would you say and do, and how might Katie experience that? How might that feel for the parent? And how likely is it could happen again? And then you can go through the different steps of the emotion coaching response. You can have a look using the scripts. Make a few notes. If you've got time, if you can do this, it makes it a bit more practical. This whole approach makes you feel that you could actually use it. So what can you notice from her behaviour so far? What could be behind it? For step 2, use some of those phrases. I notice that you are not enjoying the things you normally enjoy. You are not settled in the way you normally are when you get home from school. You seem angry. Use some of the different phrases. And if Katie had mentioned a few things that happened at school, or that perhaps her brother's done that you weren't aware that a brother had done, then you can say, if it had been the case, well, I would also feel angry if blah 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 had happened. And then assuming Katie had calmed down, what would you say to set limits? And how could you problem solve with Katie what to do if she felt in a similar situation again? How might Katie feel during that during that situation through the emotion coaching response, and how might you feel? So, thank you for listening to this session. Changing a style doesn't happen overnight, and that's okay. The times you do manage it will have an impact. So all the very best. Bye.